Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing when Belisarius Cawl met the traitor Warmaster. A spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from the Horus Heresy novel Wolfsbane by author Guy Hayley. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's waste no time and just jump straight in. Okay, so with Belisarius Cawl's next novel announced last week, it really got me thinking on how integral this character has become to the lore. Because it's pretty remarkable to think that he's actually a pretty new addition in the grand scheme of things, introduced during the Gathering Storm campaign, which saw the monumental fall of Cadia and the eruption of the Great Rift. Not to mention the return of a certain Roboute Guilliman. Not only was Belisarius revealed to be investigating the anti-warp properties of the Necron pylons, but he also was instrumental in the Primarch's rebirth, crafting his life-sustaining Armour of Fate. And then perhaps most famously of all, he was unveiled as the creator of the Primaris project, the improvement over the Emperor's own Space Marine design, which I think we're all kind of numb to now. However, when you really take a minute to stop and look at it all, it's crazy the level of importance that Belisarius has. Arguably making Cawl more important to the Imperium's survival than Guilliman himself. And I think a genuine question needs to be asked: if Guilliman could have turned the tide without him. Which sounds kind of fun, so maybe we'll have that conversation on Friday's upload as well. However, regardless, I think what gets forgotten or overshadowed by all of Cawl's adventures and importance to the current galaxy is his history. The fact that this man has been around since the Horus Heresy. I mean, indeed, he was tasked by Guilliman to improve upon the Space Marine design during the years of the Scouring in the Horus Heresy's aftermath. It was an undertaking of 10,000 years of work, making Belisarius ancient, one of the oldest beings in all of the Imperium. And I'll be honest here, while the reintroduction, if you will, of more and more Heresy-era characters to the lore has taken a bit of the mystique and uniqueness away from Beyond the Fell-Handed, which I'm not a fan of, it does add a fascinating element to Belisarius's character, opening him up for huge possibilities of unknown and untold stories. For if he's interacted with Roboute Guilliman and the Master of Mankind himself, then what else could be locked away and stored within his ancient mind? What secret could he have within? I mean, he has even come face to face with the traitor Warmaster Horus Lupercal himself. And not just come face to face, but pledged his loyalty. Now, this took place within the novel Wolfsbane, in the Forge World system of Trisolian, the very system in which Leman Russ would come to face his fallen brother. And it was there, whilst in the service of Magos Domina Hester Aspirita Sigma Sigma, Belisarius found himself as part of the betraying Mechanicum forces, allying themselves to the arriving Warmaster, in typical Mechanicum fashion for self-preservation. The blood of the betrayed had not yet dried as the Warmaster came to claim his new domain. Data transfer packets whisked across the space at frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum invisible to eyes of flesh. To those who could not see this additional layer of reality, the architecture of the sphere may have seemed brutal, A mess of metal, cables, and poorly considered embellishments. In the higher realms of data transfer, a profound beauty was revealed. Cawl looked with near religious awe at the synchronicity of fault on display. It was rare indeed to see such a huge crowd engaged in singular communion. But though beautiful, the pattern of data transmission was dark in tone. Dread suffused it. None of the adepts within dared transmit their concerns openly. But to the practiced eye of Belisarius Cawl, it was visible in the brevity of the communication bursts. There was no name for the dread that preceded Horus's arrival at the Heptagon. It was a primeval feeling that predated language. Human concepts were too restrictive to properly describe it. Long before his ship was visible to human sight or machine-moderated auspex, fear came like a wall of fog rolling in from a calm ocean. The infosphere throbbed with foreboding. Every patch of skin gleamed with fierce sweat. The dread spiked a moment before Horus's craft flew into the orb. Pictors and augur eyes focused on it, displaying magnified views on the screens. The ship was a Stormbird, common to all the legions, in the sea green of the Sons of Horus. Ordinary enough, though decorated in the ostentatious manner of Imperial warlords. The double-headed eagle of the Imperium had been removed, replaced by the icon of a glaring eye transfixed by a stylized spear point. Cawl expected more ships to follow, but it came in solitary flight. His unease grew as it flew to the centre of the orb and landed upon the platform. Only a potentate utterly sure of his power would come into potentially hostile territory so lightly protected. "Now we go," said Aspertia. Grav engines purred, pushing the dais up towards the landing platform. In Aspertia's wake came the daises of the other traitor adepts. Their reasons for throwing their lot in with Horus were their own. Cawl doubted they would be the same as Aspertia's. She rode proudly amid her acolytes, silver metal face held high. Cawl looked back to the others, deferentially hanging back from her. He had a very bad feeling about all of this. Now, we know one of the two great flaws of the Mechanicum has always been its self-interest. Its other, its lust for power and knowledge. Both of which arguably were the very reason Kelbor Hal betrayed the Emperor in the first place. And it is fundamentally the same thing happening here. Even with Cawl, with his own bad feelings and reluctance on the matter, is in truth doing exactly the same thing. Now, is he in his heart of hearts forsaking the Emperor? No. He's doing what he's got to do to survive the situation. However, regardless, the fact remains we've got the future advisor to Guilliman here, the soul entrusted with the Primaris Portum, about to bend the knee in servitude to the arch-traitor Horus Lupercal. It could be a worthy question to ask if Guilliman knows the truth of this very moment. I'm willing to bet that he doesn't. Maybe Cawl informed him that he had met some of his brothers, even met Horus Lupercal. But does he tell him that he met him when he was a traitor Warmaster? And even if he did, does he reveal to Guilliman that it was as he was pledging his allegiance to him? I'm willing to bet not. However, with that, the lone Stormbird descends from the sky and lands upon the platform, with a representative of the so-called true Mechanicum descending the ramp to receive the surrender of the Forge World, before announcing the Warmaster himself. "The Warmaster," she said. A group of armoured figures appeared suddenly in the ruddy interior, as if they had walked out of thick mist. They were universally savage, their armour hung with awful trophies. First out was a grinning warrior with a high topknot, who swept the delegation with a challenging gaze. 3 others came with him in a close group. Then a space marine with a halting gait and a serious mien. Their bare faces were pale and angry. When they were arrayed at the ramp's edge, the Warmaster came out. Horus wore a variant of Terminator armour crafted specifically for his Primarch's frame. His hands were sheathed in giant gauntlets, from whose backs sprouted claws as long as swords. But impressive though his armour was, it merely acted as a frame for his majesty. His visage was at once beautiful and terrible. He was handsome by standards applicable to gods, his features sculpted by a hand of rare genius. All eyes in Trier Station were fixed upon that face. It was impossible to look away from it. He wore a smile that promised generosity and violence in equal measure. "Citizens of the Martian Empire," he said. He did not speak loudly, but his voice carried further than that of the most skilled actor. "I have come to you to free you from the lies of the false emperor, my father." When he spoke, every thinking being in earshot willed their hearts to be still, in case they missed the slightest nuance to his words. When he paused, they craved more. "You have shown great wisdom in joining yourselves to my cause. At my side, you will help me usher in a new era for the Mechanicum. Together, as equals, not in the master and slave relationship the Emperor forced upon your noble nation, we shall reforge the galaxy and declare a new Terran Empire that shall rival the greatest realms of the ancient days. Only with me can mankind reach its true potential. By embracing the truth of the Empyrean, shall we conquer the galaxy and rule supremely forevermore." A cheer erupted from every mouth and mechanical augment. An outpouring of love for the Warmaster banished every trace of fear. So loud and fervent, the ships in the docks shook. By a great act of will, Cawl cut all forms of broadcast and plugged any external data receivers he could find in his augments. He shielded his biological thoughts with a repeated loop of devotional binaric that drowned out the speech of the Conqueror. The whole of Trisolian was enthralled. This was the legendary charisma of Horus Lupercal gone bad from within. Like a great tree whose limbs bear green leaves and fresh shoots, but whose heartwood is rotten out. The compulsion to listen went far beyond that engendered by a man of oratorical prowess. The effect the words had was out of all proportion to their meaning. He was an artwork of Master overwritten by a less kind hand. Its nobility perverted into something vile. An urge to abase himself before this man gripped Cawl, and he knew it was wrong through and through. Now I love the blend of creation and design Cawl can see here. The brilliance of the Emperor's creation, and the corruption enacted and twisted by the ruinous powers. Though of course it's far earlier in the life of the Archmagos, it gives you those signs of the man he goes on to be. The one we see 10,000 years later, within the novels The Great Work and Genefather for example. That instinctive insight of curiosity and marvel that is the genesis of all he goes on to achieve. How here, he can still see that magnificence of Horus Lupercal, and how it is all so twisted, and how surely that would help him in his later Primaris project. At least you would expect, seeing firsthand what could go wrong. However, it definitely gives a different view of his desire to still use the traitor gene seed with the Primaris as well, including Horus's own, knowing that here Cawl had to literally fight the urge to give in to Horus's words, having to try and blank them out, because he knew how powerful Horus could be, with just his charisma alone. And yet how wrong it was too. How far Horus had fallen. And we do have to hand it to Cawl for resisting here, for blocking out the Warmaster's words. But it does speak to how close he came to maybe falling himself, to betraying the Emperor, that he could possibly have been swayed, and how very different the galaxy may have ended up if he had. And knowing all of this, it does make his eagerness to use the gene seed very surprising. Indeed, all the more after Belisarius looks the traitor Warmaster in the very eyes. "Answer the Warmaster," shouted the warrior with the topknot. He plucked a mag-locked pistol from his thigh and aimed it at the hapless man. The adept was too slow in kneeling. The bolt pistol boomed. The adept's body flowered redly, showering chunks of meat and shattered bionics over the side of the grav dais. They fell into the null grav zone generated at the heart of the sphere, where they took up orbit. The echoes of the bolt's detonation rang from far off surfaces. "What about you?" said the warrior. He aimed his pistol at another adept. "Ezekiel, put away your gun," said Horus. The warrior named Ezekiel made a dismissive noise and locked his pistol back to his thigh. The adept he had aimed at knelt. The rest followed suit, displaying their submission in a rustle of robes. "I am with you," one said. "I pledge to serve the Warmaster. For the greater glory of the Martian Empire," said another. "For the Mechanicum, I will follow you," said a third. So it went on, wordlessly. It was made perfectly clear that all were expected to voice their loyalty. Horus looked to each man and woman present as his lieutenants watched, the threat of death plain in their faces. The litany of surrender proceeded. The ripples of abasement lapped out into the crowds below, and they proclaimed their loyalty. Cawl kept his head bowed the whole time, until the words stopped, and he looked up to find the would-be master of mankind staring directly at him. An ancient Terran saying had it that the eyes were the windows to the soul. In that moment, Cawl could believe it to be true. What he saw behind Horus's face was burned into his memory forever. He could never serve what he saw behind those eyes. "I am with you, my lord," he said. "I pledge my service to you and my life." The oath was hollow. As he spoke, his interference Kent shielding his mind, and thought of escape rose urgently in his thoughts. And there it is. The time that Arch-Magos Belisarius Cawl, creator of Primaris and saviour of the Imperium, pledged his loyalty to the traitor Warmaster. A brief moment to be sure, but man, an impactful one. Cawl looked the fallen and corrupted Warmaster in the eye, saw the true face of chaos, and knew it was a path he could never take. Yet it all still amazes me that he still wants to use his gene seed. Sure, it was part of the Emperor's plan for all of them to be used together, and that yes, it was the Primarchs at fault and not technically the gene seed itself. But still, seeing here how chilled to the core he was by the Warmaster's eyes, a look he would never forget, it does make you question his logic, how we can't have any doubt or reluctance at all. Sure, science is science, but beneath it all, Cawl is still human, still affected by the scars of his past, his fears, his gut instinct. It's hard to believe this moment wouldn't lead to him thinking twice, to have doubts. And speaking of doubts, regardless of his inner doubts and denial in this moment, the fact remains this is a moment that Cawl pledged himself to the Warmaster. vocally if not in spirit. And so can you imagine the repercussions across the current Imperium if this information suddenly came to light? An ancient recording found by the Mechanicus perhaps? Some report or log stored somewhere once again found? And so what on earth would happen if that came to light? A record of a young Belisarius kneeling and pledging himself to the traitor Warmaster, spread across the Imperium, announced across the Adeptus Mechanicus. It would be absolute carnage. Can you imagine the creator of the Primaris announced and revealed as a traitor? The shockwaves that would send throughout the Imperium. Sudden, renewed and refreshed doubts cast on the Primaris when they'd finally been accepted. Not to mention the looks at Guilliman for having Cawl so close and interlinked with all his plans. So entrusted. And how on earth would Guilliman himself respond, who I highly doubt knows of this moment? While I don't think Guilliman would believe that Cawl is a traitor, I do think he'd be appalled at Cawl pledging himself to the Warmaster out of a self-preservation, preferring defiant loyalty to the Emperor instead, an honourable death. Casting a real new doubt in the Primarch's mind, maybe. And I do think it'd be a revelation and repercussion that even Guilliman would struggle to defend Cawl on. I mean, what could he say, given the paranoid Imperium that he exists in? Not to mention the pressure and doubts he himself has been having to deal with. It would all be a PR nightmare. One to which I wouldn't know what the solution would be. I don't see a way that Guilliman would be able to get around it without being forced to declare Cawl a traitor, at least publicly. But what an absolutely awesome storyline it would all be, if there was just some kind of little hint or tease to this moment somewhere, to the legendary Archmagos Cawl pledging himself to the traitor Warmaster. Maybe a Dark Mechanicum approach, or an ambitious loyal Adeptus Mechanicus Magos finding it and attempting to blackmail Cawl with it, or even Guilliman himself somehow coming across it himself. The possibilities are endless really, and it would definitely be a tantalising storyline. And you gotta say, in an Imperium filled with dark buried secrets, this might just take the cake with all of them. And so I guess the question is there anyone else out there who knows the truth of Belisarius Cawl and the Warmaster? As always everyone, what do you think? Are you surprised that Belisarius has indeed met with the traitor Warmaster, and even more so that he pledged him his loyalty? Was it the logical move for Belisarius to make, knowing that he wasn't doing it honourably within his heart of hearts? Or does the reasoning not matter? Should he have denied the Warmaster and remained loyal to the Emperor? Is it the resistance of the heresy that matters? And what do you think would happen if this encounter came to light within the current Imperium? Would there be any way that Cawl could get over this? Or would it absolutely be the nail within his coffin? Would he have to be declared an arch-traitor himself and hunted down across the Imperium? Or do you think that Guilliman could save him somehow? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.